if you want to connect 3 pinch pots together, either in a row to make little herb planters for your windowsill, or 3 connected ones for condiments or appetizers, salsa, guac, bean dip, whatever, one big tip is pat out all 3 balls of clay before you start, because it's impossible to get them the same size if the balls of clay are different sizes. So you want to line up 3 balls of clay, make sure you're starting with the same amount of clay. So then we're just going to pinch out 3 bowls, pinch pots, just like we did that first one. On the second pot, I'm going to occasionally hold it up to the first pot and try to get them the same height and width. So this one is about the right height, but it's still thick, so I'm still working it out. So I'm going to occasionally hold it up and until we get to about the same width there. Another tip, if you notice your edges start to crack, depending on what kind of clay you're using, sometimes you might start to get little cracks on the edges. Just don't add too much water, but you can get this top edge just damp and reinforce it a little bit so that it stays nice and smooth for you. These are our 3 pinch pots, and they've been firming up a few hours. I wanted to show you a couple of things. One, sometimes you'll see pinch pots out in the world and they're really, really thin and delicate, and you might wonder how they get them so thin, because when we're working with the clay initially, it needs to be really wet to form the pot. So one trick is that you can form the overall shape and then let them firm up to leather hard, and then you can go in and you can still pinch this quite a bit and thin this out. It's a pretty firm leather, but I'm getting this thinner and thinner and thinner. And I still have quite a bit of control over the shape. I can round this out quite a bit. In the coil video, we're going to talk about methods of smoothing off the surface with a Sureform or a serrated rib or even a paddle. You can use all of these on your pinch pots, but since we've already seen that with a coil pot, for these I want to leave these just really rustic. I want to leave my fingerprints on these. So I'm going to go ahead and thin them out one more time, and then we're going to attach these together and it'll be a little condiment holder. I've thinned these out a little bit, gone over it one last time, so they're pretty light and thin. I'm leaving all my natural fingerprints in there and leaving the lips kind of undulating, just the way they come out naturally. So here's one little tip. If you end up with one side that's a little bit taller, I try to put the lower side in the middle and the slightly higher side out. And the reason is people tend to scoop outward, and so it just gives it a little bit extra height out here. So I kind of turn these around and get them lined up how I want them, and then I'm going to flip them over once I decide where I want them, and we're going to add just a little lug in there to attach them, and then add a little bit of decoration with a slip trailer. Something else that you can do is use your red rubber rib and smooth off the bottom of your pot. And a reason to do that is if you're working with clay that has any grog to it at all, sometimes when you fire it, the grog pops out and it could actually scratch your table. So if you run your red rubber rib over the bottom, it's going to compress the clay and push the grog back in. So you should have a nice smooth bottom and it won't scratch your table, or it's less likely to scratch your table. Sometimes you'll see these with legs. And sometimes I make them with legs. It's kind of fun. You can add a lot of different personality by putting different legs on. But these are a little bit bigger and they're plenty stable by themselves. So I don't want them elevated on the table any higher than they already are. So I'm just going around and smooth out the bottom where it's going to rest on the table. The next step is I'm going to form 3 lugs. So this is just kind of a lug. It's a triangle shape. I'm going to form them first because I want them to be about the same size. So I'm just tapping out a really rough triangle shape here. So I'm going to do 3 of those and line them all up. And then because these are leather hard, we're going to go in there and score quite a bit. This is wet clay right out of the bag. And so to make that all work together, I'm going to score these really, really well. And then I'm going to wrap this up in a plastic bag and let it dry slowly so it can equalize and shrink at the same rate, because these actually started drying, and that means they started shrinking a little bit. Okay, so it's got 3 lugs, roughly the same size, and I'm gonna take my serrated rib and some water. I'm gonna go in and I'm really going to score where these come together. I went ahead and scored this, and one tip, if you look directly down, you can see the port where the 2 pots touch. That's where you want to score, because you want to join them at the closest point where they're actually already touching. Next, I want to squeeze these out really narrow because the pots are touching, so we want a pizza slice basically. So I don't dress these up much at all. I leave them pretty primitive. If you look at some pretty ancient pots, you'll see this style. And because I'm leaving my finger marks, I want them to look rustic and primitive. So I've got this thinned out and to a pretty skinny tip there. And then I'm gonna score and then work this down, right? I'm working that all the way down. And then after I attach all 3, I'll go in with my wooden knife tool and blend that connection a little bit better. We've got our 3rd little pizza slice here. This is our pinch pot trio, and it's been sitting up overnight, covered so that this new clay we added could equalize with the pinch pots, which were a little more firm. You can see now it's pretty much the same color and it's equalized. Now that this is set up, I'm gonna go in and just touch up my connections, make sure that everything is sealed really well. I'm gonna check it from all sides. And this is a particularly fragile form because we're still pretty wet. This isn't set together. So again, to flip it over to protect the form from cracking, I'm gonna do the double boarded flip here so I can check the top, check all my connections. Okay, so this is what it looks like now. I can almost see the guacamole and the salsa and the bean dip. So I'm checking the connections on all sides here, seeing if I need to strengthen anything or smooth anything off. And that's all look good. I'm gonna double check my lip because it was sitting upside down to dry. Make sure there's nothing I need to smooth off here or round off. And that all looks good to me. So I'm gonna flip this back over and we're just gonna do a quick decoration with a slip trailing bottle. This is Velvet Amico Underglaze, and I'm just going in with my slip trailing bottle here. And I just want a really simple design. I'm just adding some simple white polka dots around the lip here. And then when it's time to glaze, I don't have to think so much about design or anything. I can just dip this in something translucent or clear and have myself a nice little condiment holder. Here's our final pinch pot trio for a condiment holder with simple design on the outside with a slip trailer. I hope you've learned a few things from the video, and mostly I hope you have fun designing something with pinch pots.